In this episode, we are going to explore the life of one of the most powerful and, for many people, controversial leaders in the world, Xi Jinping. His story is not just about politics. It is a journey that is filled with struggle with survival, with power, and with control. Whether you admire him or you question his leadership, one thing is certain: Xi Jinping's influence on the world is massive. The decisions he makes can shape the world that you and I live in today. But how did he get here? How did a young boy, who was born into a family of revolutionaries, rise up to control the world's second-largest economy? What challenges did he face along the way? And why do so many people see him as both a strong leader and, at the same time, a feared dictator? Today, we will try to uncover the details of his life. We will look at his childhood struggles, his rise in politics, and his powerful grip on China. We will also explore why he is one of the most talked-about leaders of our time. And the best part is that this story will not only give you a deeper knowledge about Xi Jinping, but it will also help you improve your English. As you listen to this story, you will learn new words, you will see new sentence structures, and you will understand how to express complex ideas in simple English. So if you are a beginner or an intermediate English learner, please don't worry. I will explain everything in a way that is easy and I hope interesting to follow. So find a comfortable place, sit back, relax, and get ready for a powerful and eye-opening story. Part 1. Early life and family background. To truly understand Xi Jinping, we must first go back in time. We need to understand where he came from. His childhood was not a normal childhood. He was born into a life of great privilege, a life of comfort. But very soon, everything changed, and his life became a story of pain, of survival, and of political struggle. Xi Jinping was born on June 15, 1953, in Beijing, the capital of China. His father, Xi Jinping, was not an ordinary man. He was a revolutionary hero. He fought alongside Mao Zedong, the man who founded modern China. His mother, Qi Xin, was also deeply involved in politics. At first, Xi Jinping's family was what you would call political royalty. They were wealthy and very powerful. His father was a high-ranking official in the Communist Party of China, or the CPC. This position gave young Xi a privileged life. He grew up in a special protected area in Beijing called Zhongnanhai. This is where China's top leaders lived. His childhood was filled with good food, private schools, and servants to help the family. From the outside, everything seemed absolutely perfect. But in the world of politics, power can disappear in a moment. In 1962, when Xi Jinping was just 9 years old, his entire world collapsed. His father, Xi Jinping, was suddenly accused of being a traitor. He was removed from his powerful position by Mao Zedong's government. In China at that time, when a politician falls from power, their entire family suffers with them. Xi's father was sent to prison. And just like that, the family lost everything. They lost their power, they lost their money, and they lost their beautiful home. Xi Jinping, who was once a privileged boy, suddenly became the son of a disgraced politician. But things were about to get even worse. In 1966, China entered a dark period called the Cultural Revolution. This was a time of complete chaos when Mao Zedong encouraged young people called the Red Guards to attack anyone who was considered an enemy of communism. This included teachers, intellectuals, and of course the families of fallen politicians like Xi Jinping's family. At the young age of 13, Xi Jinping had to watch as his family was publicly humiliated and attacked. Their home was raided by angry crowds. His mother was forced to publicly denounce his father to say he was an enemy. The pressure was too much for his elder sister. Tragically, she took her own life. And the worst part for young Xi himself was labeled an enemy of the Communist Party, all because of his family's fall from power. Because of this, Xi Jinping was sent away. At the age of just 15, he was forced to go to the countryside. This was part of Mao's policy called the Down to the Countryside movement. The policy forced educated children from the cities to go and live and work in poor rural areas. The idea was that they would learn about the hard life of the peasants. For the next 7 years, Xi Jinping lived in a very poor village called Liangjiahe in Shanxi province. Just try to imagine this for a moment. A boy who once lived in luxury was now sleeping in a cave, working in the fields all day, and struggling just to find enough food to eat. His life was extremely difficult. He would wake up at sunrise and work in the muddy fields until the sun went down. He carried heavy loads of wheat on his back and dug ditches for irrigation. He slept in a small dark cave which had no electricity and no running water. He suffered from lice from the biting cold in the winter and from constant hunger. During this time, Xi Jinping learned how to survive. He learned how to be tough. Many years later, he said, "The hardships of rural life gave me strong discipline and shaped who I am today." But even with all this suffering, Xi Jinping never gave up. While many of the other young people cried and just waited for the government to rescue them and bring them home, he did something different. He adapted to the tough life. He decided to make himself stronger. Deep down, Xi Jinping knew one thing. If he ever wanted to escape this life of poverty, he had to get back into politics. But this was not going to be easy. His father was still seen as a traitor to the country. And because of this, no university or political group wanted to accept him. So he decided to try and join the very organization that had punished his family, the Communist Party of China. He applied, and he was rejected. He applied again, and he was rejected again. Can you guess how many times he was rejected? 7 times. Yes, 7 times the Communist Party rejected his application because of his father's political past. But Xi Jinping did not quit. He just kept applying again and again. And then finally, in 1974, at the age of 21, he was accepted into the Communist Party. This was a huge moment in his life. He had gone from being a poor peasant in a cave to a member of the most powerful organization in China. He had entered the world of power. But this, of course, was only the beginning of his journey. What do you think about this part of his life? When someone faces so many rejections and hardships, what gives them the strength to keep trying? Is it ambition, belief, or something else? I would be really interested to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. Part 2. Xi Jinping's Rise in Politics. After spending 7 long years working in the countryside in Liangjiahe, Xi Jinping was determined. He wanted to become an important politician. But he understood something very important about China's Communist Party. You cannot rise too quickly. You have to prove your loyalty, and you have to be patient. So instead of trying to rush to the top, he started his career from a very low-level government job. In 1979, he got his first real political job as a personal secretary to Geng Biao, who was a senior military official in Beijing. At this time, China was not the superpower we know today. The country was still slowly recovering from the chaos of the Cultural Revolution. Many leaders were trying to rebuild the economy and the military. For Xi, even though being a secretary might sound like a small job, it was a very important learning experience. He was able to meet important people in the government. He could observe how military decisions were made. He was learning how power really worked from the inside. However, Xi Jinping did not want to be a secretary forever. He wanted to build his own political career on his own terms. So in 1982, he made a surprising decision. he requested a transfer to a small rural province called Hebei. There, he became the deputy party secretary of Zhejiang County. Many people in Beijing were shocked. Why would someone with connections in the capital city choose to leave and go work in a small, poor area? But Xi Jinping was playing the long game. He was being strategic. He knew that the Communist Party valued leaders who had real experience working in rural areas with the common people. He wanted to show the party that he was willing to work at the lowest levels of government before rising to the top. In Hebei, Xi Jinping worked day and night. He visited farmers in their fields, he promoted new economic projects, and he slowly built a reputation as a hard-working and humble leader. He was proving himself to the Communist Party one small step at a time. After gaining experience in Hebei, Xi Jinping moved to Fujian province in 1985. This was a major turning point in his career. Fujian is a coastal province located very close to Taiwan. In the 1980s and 90s, it was becoming a key area for China's new economic reforms. In 1987, Xi Jinping married Peng Liyuan, who was a very famous and beloved singer in China. 5 years later, in 1992, they had a daughter named Xi Mingze. She later studied at Harvard University in the United States, but she used a different name, a pseudonym, to protect her privacy. For the next 17 years, Xi Jinping held different government positions in Fujian. He was the vice mayor of the city of Xiamen, the deputy secretary of the province, and finally, the governor of Fujian from 2000 to 2002. During this time, China was changing very, very quickly. It was modernizing, and Fujian was one of the fastest-growing regions. Xi Jinping focused on economic development. He worked to attract investment from other countries and to improve the local infrastructure like roads and ports. More importantly, he built strong connections with China's business leaders and its political elite. He was learning how to balance economic growth with loyalty to the Communist Party. This was a skill that would later help him rise all the way to the top. However, his time in Fujian was not without controversy. During the 1990s, many Chinese government officials were involved in corruption. They were accepting bribes, helping businesses in exchange for money, and using government funds for their personal lives. In Fujian, a major scandal broke out in the late 1990s. It involved a huge smuggling operation that was worth $6 billion. Many government officials were caught and punished, but Xi Jinping remained untouched. Some people believe he was very careful and truly avoided corruption. Others think he was just very smart and knew how to protect himself from his political enemies. Either way, this scandal did not stop his rise. In fact, his reputation as a clean and disciplined leader actually helped him get promoted. By 2002, he was ready for the next big step in his career, a move that would bring him one step closer to ruling all of China. In 2002, Xi Jinping was transferred to Zhejiang province. This is one of China's most economically important and wealthy regions. This was a major test for him. If he could succeed here, he would be seriously considered for a national leadership position. As the party secretary of Zhejiang, he focused on encouraging private businesses, fighting government corruption, and improving infrastructure. Zhejiang was already a rich province, but under his leadership, it became even stronger. His policies helped businesses grow, and his reputation as a no-nonsense, serious leader continued to rise. But just as Xi Jinping was making a name for himself, a major political event was happening in Beijing. It was an event that would change his life forever. In 2007, a big political shakeup was happening in China. The Communist Party was preparing for its next big leadership transition. The current president, Hu Jintao, was getting ready to step down, and China needed a new leader. There were two main candidates being considered. One was Li Keqiang, the candidate who was supported by President Hu Jintao. The other was Xi Jinping, who was more of a surprise choice, but he was backed by some powerful political families. At the last moment, the party chose Xi Jinping as the next leader of China. Why him? It was because he had a unique combination of qualities. Unlike many other politicians, he had a strong political background because his father was a revolutionary hero. He had experience working in many different provinces. He had a clean image with no direct links to corruption scandals. And he had the quiet support of China's most powerful families. In 2007, Xi Jinping was promoted to be the vice president of China. This meant that in just 5 years, he would take full control of the country. He had won the leadership battle. But his biggest challenge was still yet to come: how to gain and then maintain absolute power once he became president. Part 3. Xi Jinping's road to absolute power. Being vice president was a powerful position, but for Xi Jinping, it was not enough. He wanted total power. When he became vice president in 2007, many people believed he would be just another leader in a long line of leaders. They thought he would be a safe, moderate politician who wouldn't change very much. But behind the scenes, away from the public eye, Xi Jinping was carefully preparing his rise to absolute power. At that time, China was ruled by a group of powerful leaders. No single person had full control. Big decisions were made collectively by a group of high-ranking politicians called the Politburo Standing Committee. Xi Jinping knew that if he wanted complete control for himself, he would have to remove all of his political rivals one by one. First, he spent years studying his opponents. Before he made any moves, he watched them. He wanted to know who was corrupt, who had secrets or scandals, who had too much power, and who might be loyal to him. On the outside, he acted humble and quiet. He pretended to be a leader who didn't want any trouble. But inside, he was planning a massive political attack. Then in 2012, just 1 year before Xi Jinping was supposed to become China's new president, a shocking scandal changed everything. A very powerful politician named Bo Xilai, who was also a rival trying to become China's next leader, was caught in a huge corruption and murder scandal. Bo Xilai's wife was accused of murdering a British businessman. The scandal was enormous. It exposed deep corruption at the very top of China's leadership. Xi Jinping saw this as his perfect opportunity. He used this scandal to convince China's other leaders that corruption was a very serious problem, a cancer on the party. And he argued that he was the only one who could clean up the system. This made him look like an honest and strong leader, a man who could bring discipline back to the Communist Party. In November 2012, Xi Jinping officially became China's new president. But now that he had the top job, he faced one big problem: how to keep it forever. As soon as he became president, he launched one of the biggest political purges in modern history. He called it the anti-corruption campaign. But for many, its real purpose was to remove his enemies. The process was often the same. First, a powerful politician would be accused of corruption. Then an investigation would be launched, but the result was usually already decided. Finally, they would be arrested, removed from power, and some were even sentenced to life in prison or death. This campaign was massive. Over 1.5 million government officials were investigated. Many top leaders, powerful people, seemed to disappear overnight. Some were sent to prison, while others were never seen in public again. Xi Jinping didn't just stop at politicians. He also purged powerful generals in the military, the CEOs of major companies, and even some famous celebrities. By 2014, he had eliminated almost all of his direct political enemies. Now there was almost no one left to challenge him. But just removing his enemies was not enough. He needed to make sure that no one would ever be able to challenge him again in the future. To secure his power, Xi Jinping took another unusual step. He started to build a personality cult around himself, much like Mao Zedong had done in the past. This meant that the government began to promote Xi Jinping as the greatest leader. They published books about his wisdom. They made schoolchildren memorize his quotes. His face began to appear on giant posters in cities and villages everywhere. He also introduced a new political philosophy called Xi Jinping thought, which became mandatory required learning in all schools and government offices. The message was clear. Xi Jinping was no longer just a leader. He was becoming a supreme ruler. And then came his biggest and most controversial move. In 2018, Xi Jinping did something that no leader had done since Mao Zedong. He removed the two-term limit for the Chinese presidency. Before this, every Chinese president had to step down after 2 terms, which is 10 years in total. But Xi Jinping changed the country's constitution, which would allow him to stay in power for life. This was a huge moment in modern Chinese history. For many people around the world and inside China, it confirmed their biggest fear. Xi Jinping was not just a president anymore. He was becoming a dictator. This decision made him one of the most powerful leaders on earth, but it also made him one of the most controversial figures in modern history. He had now secured his power inside China. The next logical question was, what would he do with it? If you want to find out how he used this incredible power to challenge the world and what happened next, make sure you are subscribed to our channel so you don't miss the next part of this fascinating story. Part 4. The Global Power Struggle. Having absolute power inside China was not enough for Xi Jinping. Now he wanted China to become the most powerful country in the world, and that meant he had to challenge the West, especially the United States. For many years, the United States was seen as the most powerful country in the world. It had the strongest economy, the biggest military, and was the leader in technology. But Xi Jinping wanted China to replace the US as the world's #1 superpower. So he focused on 3 main things: expanding China's economy, strengthening China's military, and controlling technology and information. First, let's talk about the economy. Xi Jinping knew that money equals power. If China wanted to dominate the world, it needed to control global trade. So in 2013, he launched the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. This was the biggest international infrastructure project in modern history. Under this project, China gave billions of dollars in loans to other countries. It built highways, railways, ports, and airports all across Asia, Africa, and Europe. On one hand, this helped many poor countries develop. But on the other hand, it also trapped many of them in debt, which made them dependent on China. By 2020, over 140 countries had joined this massive project. Some people called it a great investment in the future. Others called it debt trap diplomacy, a way for China to secretly take control of the world. But one thing was clear: Xi Jinping was making China the center of global trade. Second, he focused on strengthening the military. Xi Jinping knew that money alone was not enough. To be a true superpower, China also needed a powerful military. He expanded China's army, making it the largest in the world by number of soldiers. He invested heavily in new technology, developing things like hypersonic missiles, which can travel much faster than the speed of sound. He also built artificial islands in the South China Sea and then turned them into military bases. This was a direct challenge to the United States and its allies in the region. Countries like Japan, India, and the Philippines became very nervous. They saw China's military expansion as a direct threat. And Xi Jinping made one thing very clear. He said that China will one day take back Taiwan, even if it means using force. This greatly increased tensions with the US, which has always supported Taiwan's independence. Many experts began to say that a future war between the US and China was becoming more and more possible. The third area of focus was controlling technology and information. Xi Jinping understood that in the modern world, information is power. If he could control the internet, he could control what people think. And if he controlled technology, he could control the world's future. So he expanded China's system of internet censorship, which is often called the Great Firewall. Websites that are common in the rest of the world, like Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, were completely banned in China. Only government-approved information was allowed. People who criticized the government online could be arrested or could simply disappear. But he didn't stop there. He also created the world's most advanced surveillance system. Millions of CCTV cameras were installed all across China. Artificial intelligence and facial recognition technology were used to track people everywhere they went. A social credit system was introduced. Under this system, if you followed the government's rules, you got rewards. But if you criticized the government, you were punished. Your score would drop, and it could affect your ability to travel, get loans, or even find a good job. For many people, China was starting to look like a real-life version of the Big Brother state from George Orwell's famous novel, 1984. Supporters of the system said it keeps China safe and stable. Critics said it is the most advanced dictatorship in the world. But the biggest test of Xi Jinping's leadership was about to come, and it came in the form of a virus. In late 2019, a mysterious new virus was discovered in the city of Wuhan, China. At first, the Chinese government tried to hide the outbreak. Doctors who tried to speak out about the new virus were silenced. Journalists who reported on it disappeared. For weeks, China refused to give full information to the rest of the world. By the time the truth finally came out, the virus, which we now know as COVID-19, had already spread across the globe. The world was facing a pandemic. Many countries blamed China for not acting faster and for not being transparent. The US, Europe, and Australia accused China of hiding the virus's origins. Some even suggested that the virus might have accidentally leaked from a laboratory in Wuhan. This situation made Xi Jinping even more controversial on the world stage. Was China responsible for the pandemic? To control the situation inside China, Xi Jinping introduced extreme lockdown policies. Millions of people were locked inside their homes for months at a time. Anyone who tested positive for the virus was forced into large government quarantine centers. Eventually, protests broke out as people became angry and frustrated with the government's strict rules. China's economy suffered a massive blow, but Xi Jinping refused to change his strategy. For many observers, this showed his obsession with total control, even if it came at the cost of his own people's well-being. Part 5. Facing Rebellion and Economic Crisis. When the COVID-19 pandemic began, most countries in the world had strict lockdowns at the beginning. But later, they reopened their economies and tried to learn how to live with the virus. But Xi Jinping refused to do the same. Instead, he introduced what was called the Zero COVID policy. It was the strictest lockdown system in the world. Entire cities with millions of people were locked down for months, even if only a few cases were detected. People were trapped in their homes sometimes without enough food or medical supplies. If someone tested positive, they were often forcibly taken to large government quarantine centers. Drones and even robot dogs would patrol the empty streets with recorded messages warning people to stay inside. For 2 years, the Chinese people suffered under these extreme policies. Businesses closed. Millions of people lost their jobs. People became more and more frustrated and angry, and then a breaking point happened. In November 2022, a tragedy in the city of Urumqi sparked outrage across the entire nation. A fire broke out in a tall apartment building, and tragically, 10 people burned to death. Why? Because the building's doors and exits had been blocked or locked shut as part of the lockdown restrictions preventing people from escaping and firefighters from getting in. People across China finally snapped. They had suffered in silence for too long. Thousands of people poured into the streets. They were holding blank sheets of white paper, which became a powerful symbol of protest against Xi Jinping's censorship. This movement, which became known as the White Paper Protests, was shocking. It was shocking because people in China rarely protest directly against the central government. Some protesters were even brave enough to call for Xi Jinping to step down a crime that could be punished with life in prison. The protests spread across major cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. For the first time in a long time, Xi Jinping looked vulnerable. How did he respond? At first, he simply ignored the protests, probably hoping they would just die out. But secretly, he made a shocking decision. He suddenly ended the entire zero-COVID policy overnight. This was highly unusual. Xi Jinping almost never changes his mind or backs down. But this time, it seems he was forced to retreat because he knew the protests could grow into something much bigger and more dangerous for his rule. But ending zero COVID did not end his problems. For decades, China's economy had been growing at an unbelievable speed. There were massive factories, huge infrastructure projects, and billions of dollars in trade. Millions of people were lifted out of poverty. China became the second largest economy in the world. But by 2023, everything was starting to slow down, and people began to wonder, was China's economic miracle finally coming to an end? For years, China's real estate market was booming. Developers built thousands and thousands of new apartment buildings. Investors bought properties thinking the prices would always go up. Banks gave out billions of dollars in loans. But there was one big problem. Most of these new buildings were never actually used. Millions of apartments sat empty, creating what people started to call China's infamous ghost cities. Ordinary people could not afford to buy these homes. Developers started to run out of money and stopped construction halfway through projects. By 2023, major companies like Evergrande, one of the largest property developers in China, collapsed under massive debt. Millions of people who had invested their life savings lost everything. The entire real estate market, which was a huge driver of China's economy, began to crash. For Xi Jinping, this was a disaster. And it wasn't just real estate. For years, Chinese students were told to study hard. Go to university, and they would be guaranteed a great future. But by 2023, something shocking was happening. Millions of young people could not find jobs. The youth unemployment rate hit over 20%, the highest in the country's recent history. University graduates with degrees could not get even basic jobs. Many young people started to give up on their dreams. Some returned to their home villages to work in farming or manual labor. This was a huge embarrassment for Xi Jinping because his government had always promised prosperity. But now, the younger generation was losing hope. More and more young people started to become critical of the government online, blaming Xi Jinping's policies for their problems. For years, Xi Jinping had ruled with an iron fist, and some would say, with fear. Nobody dared to challenge him. But by 2023, some small cracks started to appear inside the Communist Party itself. Some leaders were secretly unhappy with Xi's extreme policies. They blamed him for the economic slowdown and the protests. There were quiet rumors of secret power struggles happening behind closed doors. Then one mysterious incident in 2023 shocked China. The defense minister Li Shangfu disappeared. He was a very high-ranking military official and was thought to be a close ally of Xi Jinping. And then one day, he just vanished without any explanation. The government refused to talk about it. After securing his position as China's most powerful leader, Xi Jinping had turned his attention to the world. His dream was clear to make China the strongest country on earth. But the competition with the United States was becoming more and more intense. This led to a kind of economic and technological war. In 2018, U.S. President Donald Trump placed heavy taxes on Chinese products. Xi Jinping responded by doing the same to American products, which created a trade war. The U.S. also accused Huawei, a giant Chinese technology company, of spying for the Chinese government and banned it. Many other countries followed, which damaged China's tech industry. The U.S. also blocked the export of advanced computer chips to China, making it very difficult for China to develop its own advanced technology. This was called the chip war. And Western countries became very concerned about TikTok, the popular Chinese-owned app, believing it was stealing user data. Xi Jinping was fighting multiple battles on multiple fronts all at once, and the issue of Taiwan was always there, a major point of tension. Xi increased military pressure, sending Chinese fighter jets to fly near Taiwan's airspace. Many people around the world feared that if China ever invaded Taiwan, a global war involving the U.S. could begin. Despite all these risks, Xi Jinping was determined to show the world that China was powerful and fearless. The final chapter. The future of Xi Jinping and China. Xi Jinping has led China through massive world-changing transformations. But now, as we have seen, new challenges are threatening his leadership. Will he continue to shape China's future with an iron will, or will his rule begin to face unexpected problems? Under his rule, China certainly became more powerful on the world stage. But it also became more controlled on the inside. Strict laws were put in place. Universities were forced to follow the government's political guidelines, and many private businesses lost their independence. China became a world leader in advanced technology like artificial intelligence, space research, and robotics. But its government also used that same technology for total control. China has become a kind of digital fortress where every citizen can be watched. But despite all this control, one thing remains unpredictable: the people. Not everyone in China agrees with Xi's strict policies. Many young people feel frustrated with the lack of freedom and opportunity. Some students and intellectuals have started to quietly question his leadership. Small acts of resistance have appeared, with people using secret messages or symbols online to criticize the government. Xi has always responded with force, with arrests, with more internet censorship, and with military crackdowns. But as history shows, no leader can control the hearts and minds of the people forever. China's relationship with other countries has also become more complicated. The rivalry with the United States has grown more intense. Many Western countries have become wary of Chinese investments, fearing that China is gaining too much influence. In response, China has formed closer alliances with countries like Russia, Iran, and North Korea, which challenges the power of the West. But is China gaining strong allies, or is it just isolating itself from the world's most powerful economies? Xi Jinping's decisions have shaped China in ways that will be felt for many generations to come. But how will history judge him? Will he be remembered as the great leader who made China strong and proud again? Or will he be seen as a dictator who took away freedom and created a system of total control? Only time will be able to answer that question. For now, Xi Jinping's rule continues, and the entire world is watching. His choices will determine not only China's future, but also the future of global politics for all of us. And that's where our story for today concludes. This one was a real journey covering so much history and so many complex events. I am so curious to hear your take on it all. What were your final thoughts as you listened? Do you have any lingering questions about why a character did what they did, or about a certain event? Please leave all your opinions, your theories, and your questions in the comments section below. I truly love reading them and building this conversation with all of you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found the story interesting and helpful for your English. Take care, and I will see you in the next story.